I'm going to go over some Tinkercad basics as well as some more advanced techniques to help make your work more precise. So first off, let's look at the naming that Tinkercad uses. They come up with these cool little preset names, but that's not going to help you find your project later. So the first thing I always do is rename my work. So I'm going to call it Justin Demo. All right, next thing to know about is probably the camera. So this box right here is going to change your view of the work plane and any objects on it. So you can click and drag on the box and move it around that way. You can also, if you have a 3-button mouse, which I highly recommend, you can right click and drag, okay? Or if you have a middle button and you hit that, you can pan left, right, up, and down. You can jump to certain faces here by clicking on the box. You can also go back to home by hitting this button. You can zoom into everything or whatever is selected. And then there's manual zoom controls here. And then this last button, which switches to a flat view. So if I hit this, I'll no longer have perspective, I'll have parallel lines. This is really good if you're trying to align things, and we'll look at it a little bit more later. So the next thing to look at is the work plane. Any shapes I drag out are going to be on this work plane automatically. So you'll notice the base of the cone here is actually touching the work plane. If I go to move an object, it's going to move based on the grid on the work plane. So if I click and drag on this cube and pull my mouse to the right, it's going to move in 1 millimeter increments to the right. And I can actually see that number, and I can actually click on it and type it in. So I could move it exactly 10 over that way. If I want to move it front and back, let's say I want to move it back 10, I would do -10. It'll move away from me by 10. So how did I know it was millimeters? Well, down here on the grid settings, it actually says millimeter. And if I wanted to change it, I could go to Edit Grid and change it right here under Units. So right now I'm moving it by 1 millimeter at a time. And what if I wanted to move it by 0.5 millimeter at a time? Well, I would change this here. So I can go to 0.5. And now when I drag this, you'll see it'll go 2.53, 3.54, 4.5, etc. The snap grid setting also applies to nudging. And nudging is when you use the up, down, left, right keys on your keyboard to move a shape. So every time I hit the key, it's moving by 0.5 millimeter. If I hold down Shift, it's going to move by 10 times that amount, or in this case, 5 millimeters. To move a shape up away from the work plane or down towards the work plane, we can use this little black arrow that floats above the shape. And just like before, we can come over here and type in a number to get a specific amount. It also lets you nudge with the keyboard by holding down Control and using the up and down arrow keys. If I hold down Shift, just like before, it jumps by 10. So another useful thing about the work plane is that you can move it around. So I can put the work plane on any one of these faces simply by using the Workplane tool and clicking on the desired face. So let's say I wanted to put a cone on top of the box. So I would just click the work plane right here. You'll see I get this bright orange grid, and if I zoom in, you can kind of tell that it's over the top of the box. Now when I bring the cone out, it's right there, and I can just manually align it perfectly right on the center. All right, I'm going to show you how to align things in Tinkercad. So you could do this manually. So if I want to put this cylinder dead center right on top of this box, what I would do is figure out how tall the box is. Okay, it's 20 millimeters. And then I would use this handle here to move it up 20 millimeters and then move it over to the box, change my camera so I'm looking at it from the top, and then also switch to flat view. So I'm looking at it without any distortion. I can zoom in a little bit. It's now just like a 2-dimensional drawing essentially. And I'm going to move this around until it looks like it's in the center. All right, so I'm running into a little bit of a problem here. No matter what I do, I can't seem to get it, even with nudging, into the right spot. Now, I could lower my snap grid and keep doing this until I feel like it looks right, like moving it 0.1 millimeters at a time, but I'm never going to know if I'm actually right. It's always going to look a little off to me, and this is going to take a lot more time and guesswork than it needs to. So I'm going to show you now how to do the same thing, but using a couple tools in Tinkercad that'll make our life a lot easier. First, I want to get the cylinder up on top of the box. So I'm going to go to Workplane, click on the top of the box, click on the cylinder, and then hit D on my keyboard to drop. So now it's aligned with the top of the box. The next thing I want to do is use the Align tool to automatically move this cylinder to the center of the box. So to do this, I'm going to click on the cylinder, hold down Shift, and click on the box. I don't want to deal with this hexagon over here. It's just going to stay where it is. Okay, so now when I go to align, you'll see I get these handles. And if I hover over the handles, you'll see what's going to happen to both shapes. So right now, if I hit this, they're both going to move to the middle of this selection. Same thing if I go here, they're going to move to the center. That means no matter what I do, I'm also moving that box as well. And I don't want to move the box. I only want to move the cylinder to the center of the box. So to do that, I'm just going to click on the box once. Now you notice those handles have moved and they're now centered on the box. So when I hover over those handles now, you can see what it's going to do to the cylinder. So I'm going to click this one to align it this way. I'm going to click this one to align it that way, and we're good to go. Once it's aligned, you'll see that the handles have grayed out, telling me that they're aligned properly. A tool that can be useful when you're doing precise work is a ruler. So I'm going to come up here and click on the ruler tool, and I can drop this anywhere on the work plane. Let's say this point right here is good. So at first it doesn't seem to do much. It just gives you a ruler going left to right and front to back. But if I click on an object, it's going to give me information about the object's position and its dimensions. So in this case, it's showing me right now that it's 20 millimeters deep, 28.66 wide, and 40 millimeters tall. Those are all the blue marks. The green marks are showing me its position from this origin, and it's measuring to the midpoint of the object. And I can tell that because when I hover over this button, it says use endpoint, which looks more like this. So it's 4 millimeters up from the origin point, 8.34 over to this edge. So this can be really helpful when you're trying to figure out if you size something correctly, or how far away something is from another object.